Alrighty. Hello, hello. Welcome to Forensics, the What is Life podcast, where we make the uncomfortable comfortable. I'm your host, Zafreen. Thanks for being here today. And as always, these thoughts and opinions are completely my own, as well as my friend who's joining us today, Linda Otieno. And you're here to hopefully hear about life and maybe just want a space to feel heard and seen. If not, no worries too. Just appreciate you being here. Thank you for being here for today's episode. Today we're going to be talking about It Takes a Village, and I'm joined by my friend Linda Otieno. And Linda, would you like to just share a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So my name is Linda Otieno. I've known Zafreen for many, many years. We met in 2006, 10? I don't know.
It's been a long time, yeah.
So a little background on myself. I was born in Kenya, raised in Kenya until age 9. At that time, we won the green card and were able to come to America. My parents had applied for a green card a couple years prior. And so it was a surprise for us to get accepted because it's so rare for people to get accepted. And then we moved. And so we moved to Maryland in 2002. And we've lived here ever since. I have an older brother and a younger sister. And all of us still live in Maryland. My brother recently moved, but the rest of us still live in Maryland.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you being here, Linda. And I'm so happy to be able to share this experience with you. And I'm really thankful that our paths crossed all those years ago. It's crazy to think how long ago that was.
I know. It doesn't feel like that long, because our relationship is so strong. But it's been a while.
Yeah, it has. And for those of you who don't know about myself, I am a first-generation Bengali American. I was born here in the United States, and I am the only girl in my family. I have 3 brothers. And I guess. Oh, and then Linda, I guess, would you like to share just a little bit about what brings you here today? Like a little bit about your, professional background?
Yeah. So professionally, I am a resident physician. I am an obstetrician and gynecologist, OBGYN, as people call it. And what brings me here, of course, is to discuss the topic of today, which I think is a very important topic, and that is It Takes a Village. I strongly believe I would not have accomplished this goal of being a physician, especially in OBGYN, because it is a competitive field, if I didn't have the village that supported me and brought me here.
Yeah. And I mean, I can definitely attest to that. I am very, very thankful for my village as well. And even just now, as I just always just feel so grateful whenever I think about it. And I mean, Linda, you are one of those people that are part of my village. And absolutely, I know when I've had my ups and downs, I've always been able to just reach out, whether it's just a text or just venting. And I know you've
100%.
So just,
yeah.
So, all right.
And I feel like we've gone through a lot of life, stages together, because we met when we were both single. We've gone through getting our current partners, getting married, and with each decision that we have to make, we always, we're talking to each other, consulting each other. Yes. And I think that's just part of what a village is. It's your sounding board sometimes, and you try to make decisions. So it's
oh my gosh,
valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. So for today, on this topic of It Takes a Village, right? I feel like all these subjects of all these topics of all these episodes are so subjective and so personal to each person. And so I'm curious, Linda, what is it that you want the listeners to kind of take away from today? Or I guess, what is your goal for today as we're kind of talking about this?
Yeah. So my goal for today is, and like you said, these are subjective. So this goal is based off of my personal experience, but I would like for our listeners to know that it's more than okay to use your village, whoever that may be, maybe one person, multiple people, your family, your friends, your pets, whatever. But it's crucial to have those people be in your corner, support you as you try to achieve whatever goal you have. And especially if the goal is insurmountable, then you definitely 100% need your village. You can't do it on your own.
Oh, 100%. And I think to go off of that, one goal I would love people to kind of take into account while they're listening is it's okay to lean on people. Like you said, that it can be crucial, like allowing yourself to be vulnerable and lean into that support system, whatever that is for that person. Because I know that's something for myself took me a very, very long time to realize that there were people that genuinely were there that could support me. And just, yeah. And that was the piece, right? Is the fact that people wanted to, because I had always just experienced that it was the former, that no one did want to support me. And so the fact that people showed up, it was so foreign to me. Like So.
Yeah. And the great thing about involving your village when you're trying to accomplish whatever goal, small or large, is that when you do accomplish that goal, everyone feels ownership with that goal, right? And so you bring joy not just to yourself, but to multiple people that you brought into your your experience and your journey. So it's definitely it spreads the joy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know for myself, there are times where I was part of somebody's journey to get to some goal. And if for whatever reason, we hadn't spoken for a little while, like I'll get little moments of like, hi, I wonder how they're doing. Or like, I want to just check in. Cause I know there were a lot of things that they had going on, and it's refreshing and really nice to see that they were able to achieve that. And you just feel happy for them. Right.
Yeah.
Like so.
Just genuine happiness for them. Yeah.
Yes. Man. Alrighty. So for village, I mean, I know we were kind of talking about it already, but like, what is it that you want to focus on today? Like, what is it that you feel is important that you want to share in regards to this topic?
In terms of just stories, personal experience, or anything. Yeah. So I'll share my an example of in my life that I feel like it took a village to achieve. So of course I mentioned I'm a resident physician, and it just takes a lot to be able to match as a resident physician in the American medical system. And it also takes a lot financially to be able to do this. And so one way that I leaned on people was with my husband. So my husband and I got married in medical school. And at the time I was in a lot of debt for med school, and I knew I was going to accrue more and more debt. And he was working, but this is he was the only one working between the two of us. I was still in school. And so we made the decision to live with his parents. His parents thankfully had a studio apartment in their backyard. And so we made the decision to live with his parents, which a lot of newlyweds don't do that. You get married and you try to live out on your own. But I chose to rely on my village, my in-laws, and my husband to financially support me through that period. And recently we moved out on our own, but I'm very grateful that I did that, even though, it's not the cultural norm to stay with your in-laws right after you get married. But I'm very glad I leaned on them, because not only did they support me financially, but they supported me physically. My mother-in-law was one that was cooking for us every night, supported me emotionally also, because medical training is really, really difficult. And so I would come home, I was able to vent with them. They were able to give me perspective, encourage me. And so that, to me, that's one recent example that comes to mind about taking a village. I could not have done that on my own.
Yeah.
And if I had moved out with my husband and declined the help that his parents were offering me, then all of this would be on him. And that would just not be fair. So I think when you do have people around you that can support you, it's really important to, let go of your pride and take that support.
Yeah. And that's so amazing to hear that you're able to lean on those individuals, because even just hearing you speak, I mean, it makes me even think of this whole concept of it takes a village, right? Like, it's never just, let me not just pigeonhole it, but it's usually not just one person, right? It's the fact that all these different people play a different role, right? Like, if you think of the concept of a village, right? You've got all these different individuals that have some specific purpose that helps everybody get to their goal at the end.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I just think about, even for myself, right, of the different walks of life to where I am now, and different people, even to this day, that I will lean on for specific things that I wouldn't necessarily others, right? Like, there are certain familial things that I'll maybe lean on my husband for, but then there are other ones that are very particular that I may lean on actually my peer, like my friends, like you are, Hannah, as opposed to him, because I know the difference in what he's able to offer, and vice versa. And also the burden or pressure that puts on that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful. And I, it's really great to hear that you had that. And I know that's not a lot of people have that. Right. And and the fact that, you know, hearing you talk about it, it sounds like, you know, in many ways, like you had to allow yourself to be vulnerable to accept that help as well. Especially because, I mean, speaking for myself, like growing up, it was always like, you can only depend on yourself.
Right.
Like you cannot put your problems, your burdens onto others, even if they're not even that, right? Because what is other so-and-so going to say? Or like, you don't want anyone to have any leverage over you. And that is just so toxic. And it's so interesting because that's actually something for my own husband, Jordan, right? Like he helped me unlearn so many things that I didn't realize I was in a vicious cycle for until he just objectively just asked me a simple question of, well, why does it matter?
Right.
Literal truth bomb. And I was like, oh my God, like, why does it matter?
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah. And I don't think I would have been able to break the cycle if I didn't have him say that, because I had other friends in my life that instead would just listen because they just didn't know anything, right? Like there's only so much they can offer in that space. And for him to be like, I don't know, man, like maybe you should think about it. And
I think that's really the, one of the values of being with someone or having friends that are different from you, because someone who comes from a different culture, they didn't grow up with your cultural norms. And so, you know, they can see the beauty in some of your cultural norms, and then they can question the ones that don't make sense. Yeah. And so sometimes you need someone to question you so you can, you know, think twice and maybe reconsider why you think or believe certain things. I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then another point that you brought up is, you know, growing, I mean, it was the same for us. When we first moved to America, we had nothing. My parents, I think, came with $600. We learned about welfare. We learned about food stamps, things like that. And they just would not sign up for it because the same, you know, just similar to what you said, there's this thought of why, you know, like rely on someone, like try to get it done on your own, do it on your own. And so for me now, like, you know, getting married later and relying fully on my husband's family, it was not that easy. It was something that was going against what I was taught. But sometimes you really have to do that. You have to just go against what you were taught if it doesn't make sense or serve you now or in your future. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, shout out to Will.
I know. He's the best. He's honestly the best person ever.
Oh man, yeah, Will's a great human. We had quite many nicknames for him.
Yes. William, Will.
It's so great. Oh my gosh. And actually, so I loved how you mentioned, right, that the village is more than just a sounding board, right? Like it's so helpful to have others that may have opposing views or a different point of view, so that it helps you grow, it helps you learn, and it in many ways just helps push you to get to where you need to be. And I think that just speaks volumes of also just like who you surround yourself with, right? Like if you can even have the wrong village, like there's the piece of, right, like if you just surround yourself with like-minded people, then, you know, you can grow to an extent, and then at a certain point you hit a ceiling, and you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Because you're all just in the same bubble, as opposed to have somebody who's from outside looking in to be like, I don't know if that makes sense. Or, okay, cool. Like, right. Just those little nuances where it makes you start thinking.
Exactly. That get you to think. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
I think, for me, when I think about a village, right, it's something that growing up, I think I had like a certain fantasy of what I thought it was. And I don't know if that's just from, you know, having to toe the line of assimilating to Western culture and like seeing what's on TV, and then what I experienced myself, because like our families, they have their own version of their village.
Yeah.
And thinking that that's what I needed for myself. And then having to really sit and realize that when I would start to like, even just, I'm just trying to think of like a specific rate of, I guess even just high school, right? Like starting to figure out who I was and like how I fit in. to what I want to do with my life, and realizing that when I started noticing that I wasn't fitting into the ideals of my parents, noticing that I couldn't lean into who they considered their village, because then I wasn't met with the support that I hoped for. And coming to the terms of trying to figure out, where do I identify that village? Like, how do I figure that out? Like, where am I going to make sure that I have the support that I wish that I had? And it's so interesting, because I felt lost in many ways when I realized that I couldn't, I guess depend is the right word, but I also couldn't really, just rely on what my parents' construct of a village was. Yeah. And it was just so scary to then be like, well, then what do I do? Because I don't want to mess up. I don't want to have somebody like steer me in the wrong direction, like be more detrimental to myself. And I guess it was that vulnerability of realizing it's totally okay if your village is different from somebody else's.
100%. Yeah.
And yeah, I think.
Yeah. And I think what I hear you saying is, pick a village that shares the same values as you. And sometimes when you're growing up and you don't know what your own values are. You inherit values from your parents. And then, like you were saying, in high school, when you're really coming into your own, is when you realize that, okay, thanks mom and dad for this value, but I don't believe in this one. And I think that contrast is even more obvious and significant in kids of immigrant, right? Because our parents just have a very different way of thinking compared to us, because we were exposed to Western culture earlier. And so just being conscious about picking a village that shares the same values, so that no matter what, they'll be guiding you toward the values that mean something to you. And they don't guide you away from your values, because you can't really thrive as a person if you're chasing values that are not true to you. Yeah. Oh,
absolutely. I mean, because then you're just falling into an identity crisis at that point, right? Because there's that tension of you trying to figure out what you think you need versus what you know that you need. And I mean, I think is something a lot of immigrant kids, or just, first generation, wherever have you, has to toe that line, right? I mean, I just think back of so many examples of me trying to adhere to what I thought was, I guess, what was laid out for me, or what was supposed to be laid out for me, and then recognizing it wasn't, and just keep receiving negative feedback. And it wasn't until I started finding individuals that, I don't even know if like open-mindedness is the right term, but those that were just willing to listen and be non-judgmental, that I was able to then figure out like who were going to help me get to where I need to be, and who were actually going to be beneficial for my growth.
Right.
And that was hard, right? Because it's like you're battling those ideas of fear, guilt, shame. Yeah. Are you shunning your culture because you're doing that? Yeah. And I think that's something when it comes to having a village, right? It's just like, you said so beautifully, of just making sure that the values just align, and you know what your values are, and then surrounding yourself with those individuals.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we've talked about a lot of different things. What do we think is important for people to kind of walk away with from today's episode? What in your mind, Linda?
Yeah. So one thing that I would want someone listening to this conversation to walk away with is just the affirmation that it's okay to lean on your village. And just like we were talking about in the end of our conversation, is you can choose your village, and it's okay if your village looks different from what you thought it would look like, or what your family expects your village to look like.
Yeah. No, I think that's really great. And I think it's also that we aren't a burden to our village. They're there to support us. And they want to support us. Yeah, exactly. They want to support us. Thank you. Redirect. Yes. And I think for those listening, if you find yourself having difficulty with towing the line of your village being different than your parent, or than, I guess how you think they would be like growing up, whether that's your parents or associated with your culture, relatives, what have you, that it's finding a way to realize what is the fear that is holding you back, and recognizing that there may just be some things that you need to unlearn.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about even leaning into a village, there's a vulnerability there. And a lot of people, one thing that the pandemic highlighted is that a lot of people don't like sitting with themselves. A lot of people don't like being alone. And it's because at the end of the day, then you have to realize, like, what is your identity? What is it that you want to do? And when you surround yourself with others, is it because it's some fantasy of what you want? Or is it because it's actually going to help you achieve your hopes and desires?
Yeah. Okay. And I feel like those are some of the hardest things in life, just getting real with yourself, right? Like, we distract ourselves with so many things, work, this and that and the other, many times trying to chase an ideal that's not true to us, but really chasing the things that are true to you are really hard, because like Zafreen was saying, you have to unlearn some things that you were taught, or some things that you've acquired throughout life. And these are hard things, but also very important, because life is short and you really have to live your life according to the things that are true to you, because those are the things that will bring you joy at the end of the day, and meaning as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So many powerful messages, so many nuggets of truth. Linda, just appreciate you being here and just helping lend your voice to this space. I know, being a, resident physician and all the different things that you've had to navigate. Not even being born in the US and then figuring out like how you even fit in that space, and just hearing your journey and all the different people you've had to rely on. And it's incredible to see where you are today. And just want to thank you so much for sharing that piece of you with the world, essentially.
And I obviously am very excited to be here. I feel very honored that you thought of me to ask me to be part of your podcast. I'm very excited that you're doing this. And I'm also very grateful for our friendship that has lasted through many, many years, over a decade, actually. But yeah, love you.
Oh my gosh, over a decade, dude, that's like a third of my life. That's fine.
Yeah, a long time.
That's so incredible. Yeah. Oh man, what is life? All right. What is life? Yes. So, all right. With that, I think this is a great place to kind of end things. And where can those who may be interested in reaching out to you find you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to find me would be on my Instagram. And my Instagram handle is my last name, Otieno, first name Linda, MD, Otieno Linda, MD.
Excellent. And thank you so much for sharing that. I will post that somewhere for people to be able to find.
Thank you.
And yeah, so if you guys are interested in learning more about Linda's journey, just want to reach out to her with any and all questions related to anything, really, please do so.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for being a part of another episode of Foreignsics. See you next time.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.